Kendall Jenner was patient zero of the literary it girl. I loved that.
Kendall was first photographed like reading Chelsea Hodson's book on a yacht, which kind of started this whole thing of, oh, Kendall is reading all of these kind of indie cool girl books. Who is giving them to her? Which is obviously it's problematic to think that she couldn't like find them herself. But in this case, it's like behind this patient zero literary it girl is another literary it girl.
It's the oldest marketing trick in the book that sex sells. Do I need to be posting with my book in a bikini to be a New York Times bestseller?
The exciting thing about literary it girl to me is that it's just getting more creative about marketing and self-presentation because no, you don't have to pose in a bikini to sell a book, but the more involved you are in the marketing and publicity of your book, the better it's going to do.
Welcome to the Word Weaver podcast, a literary place in cyberspace where I share tangible tips, tricks, and words of wisdom to help you achieve your dream of writing a book. I'm your host, Louise Johnson, a writer and the author of Behind the Red Door. Let's dive into today's chapter. Welcome back to the Word Weaver podcast. I'm your host, Louise Claire Johnson, and today I'm really excited to talk with Sophia June. Sophia is a culture writer in New York City, covering books, music, fashion, nightlife, and trends. She's formerly a staff culture writer at NYLON magazine and a news assistant at the New York Times. Sophia is also the co-founder of Language Arts, a literary newsletter about the books you actually want to read. All right, Sophia June, welcome to the Word Weaver podcast.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm really excited to talk with you because I feel like I kind of asked you out on a date. I like blindly sent you an email gushing about your work, that I follow you online. I have like a writerly girl crush on you. So I appreciate you being game and coming on the podcast.
I mean, if only dating were really that easy. Like, I'm so happy to be here.
I know. I wish it was that easy. Honestly, it should be. Before we kind of dive into the hot literary topics, what's your background? How did you become a journalist in New York City? Kind of take me through, how did you start working at NYLON magazine? You were a news assistant at the New York Times. How did this all happen, living, working in New York City?
Great question. I am from Portland, Oregon. I never had
Oh.
dreams of coming to New York at all. I went to my state school. Afterwards, I moved back to Portland and I was working at an alt weekly there. Then I worked really briefly as a speechwriter for the mayor there. And I really missed journalism. And I was like 25 and I was feeling like Portland was really small. I realized like, oh, I want to really pursue journalism. Like I need to go to New York. Like there's nowhere else in Portland that I feel like I want to work. So I had a friend who worked at the New York Times who I'd gone to college with. She connected me with her boss. I flew to New York for 48 hours to interview there. And this is like for an assistant job pre-pandemic. And so they were like, "You flew here for this interview?" I cleared out my savings. Like it was so ridiculous. Anyway, so yeah, I applied to like a million jobs in New York and the New York Times is the one that I got. So I really lucked out, moved to New York, and then yeah, I worked at the New York Times as a news assistant for 2 years. It's a job where you kind of rotate which sections of the paper you work for.
Oh,
So
cool.
the one that enjoyed the most was working for the book review section. So I worked for the book review section. I for a couple of months, a job that literally involved just opening all of the mail that they get every day. Like I would open mail for like 5 hours straight.
You
Like it
probably
was
got so many paper cuts. That's so much mail that they get.
they get every single book and then some. Every book gets sent to them. So
That's so
it was
cool.
really, yeah, I learned a lot working there, in terms of like book coverage and how to assign reviews. And I didn't know at the time that I wanted to write about books, but it kind of helped like spark that interest. And then I working at NYLON had always been a dream. Like NYLON magazine was my favorite magazine when I was growing up. And so they were hiring for a culture writer, a staff culture writer. This was like a part-time job, but I applied and I got it. So I left the New York Times to do this part-time job at NYLON. I bartended. I supported myself by bartending the whole time I was at NYLON until I got hired there full time a couple years later. So it's really been an interesting journey, but I feel like very typical for what it takes to like be a journalist in today's climate.
100%, especially in New York. That feels like a very like sexy New York making it in the city journalist story.
Yeah, exactly. I loved working at NYLON. So then I was a staff writer there for 3 years, and I was really tasked with like helping to bring book coverage to NYLON. So that
Oh,
kind of brings us to where we are now.
I'm with you. I loved nylon growing up. Back then, magazines were everything, but it felt like the cool girls magazine.
Yeah, exactly. It was like the kind of indie girl magazine. Like it was, the magazine that was writing about like indie music and that was covering books too, like when we were teenagers. So it was always a dream to work there.
Back in Portland, you said you went to your state school, but did you study, like, did you get an MFA? Did you study writing?
Yeah, I graduated with a degree in journalism.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
in college, like I worked at my student newspaper the whole time. I worked at the alt weekly in my college town. I was writing about books for my college newspaper in like 2013.
Yeah.
So I have been doing arts and culture journalism for a really long time. Like as soon as I figured out that I wanted to do arts and culture journalism when I was in college, I was like, oh, this is a job. Like, this is the greatest thing ever. Like, I can't believe I can do this as a job. Alongside this, I've always written fiction and creative nonfiction on the side, like kind of more for myself. And then in the last couple of years, have been making more of a pivot towards that kind of writing too.
Oh, I love that. So
Yeah.
are you freelance writing in New York and then doing your own creative writing, novel writing on the side?
My day job right now is copywriting. It's great because it gives me like the mental space. I have a lot more creative energy to do, yeah, freelancing, to do language arts, my Substack, and I just finished the first draft of my novel.
I was gonna ask you that if you would ever write your own novel. I mean, finishing a first draft, first of all, congratulations. Like just
Thank
getting
you.
to that
You know
stage.
how it is. Like, it's crazy.
God, it's so much self-doubt just to get there.
Yeah,
What's it
it's insane.
about genre? Can you like tease anything about it?
Yeah, it is literary fiction. It takes place in the summer of 2021, and it is about a girl who, kind of in the wake of a death in her life, she quits her whole life. She quits her like very stable media job, her stable boyfriend, and she starts working at like a past its prime Bushwick bar, dating some like terrible guy and kind of free falling into this like really fun, kind of messy life. It's like the perfect distraction from her grief, which is kind of the only thing she really should be doing. At the end, she kind of needs to figure out where she is going to land, if she's going to like free fall into this, kind of new life. Is she going to go back to her old, polished, safe life or land somewhere in the middle? And it's about like this balance of chaos and responsibility and being in your like late 20s and almost having this like, I don't know, a second kind of like youth, almost like kind of a later like messy era. Yeah, it's fun and it takes place in this like, waxed and vaxxed summer post COVID. So
Oh, I love that. Sounds right up my alley. That's everything I love to like a coming of age. You got
yes.
Bushwick. What's your next step with it? Rewrites? Are you gonna go right out, get an agent?
I am working with an agent right now on a big round of edits. So I just finished like the first draft and now we're doing a big like structural edit. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to work on that over the next like couple of months and then we'll do another edit. So,
And then on
it's such
sub.
a long process, but
I know everyone's always shocked how long it takes, but this is the fun part now. Like, it's also scary just handing that over the first draft to your agent and having them give you
yeah.
developmental edits. But
Yeah.
then I find it easier. I don't know if you're like this too, and it's easier to edit words on a page versus staring at the blank page. That's actually the hardest part for me.
I found that in the writing process, I tackled it like my first round through. And by the way, it's like no one teaches you how to write a novel. Maybe they do when you get an MFA. I don't know, but I never learned how to write a novel. And so I went through it the first time and I was like, this is going to be like my vomit draft. Like, I'm just going to get everything out and it doesn't have to be coherent. And then my next, pass through the whole thing will be kind of writing through some of these really like messy, undeveloped parts. And I found that when I was doing the vomit draft, I was like, oh my God, it's so hard to just write, have this like generative phase. Like, I feel like you know, you have to like get the block of marble before you can carve it. And this is so hard. But then the second time through, when I was doing more like, editing of that messy writing, I kind of missed the freedom of just being able to write whatever you want. The whole thing is a crazy experience. And I feel like every step of the way, you're kind of wishing that you were at like another step.
Yeah, exactly. So the grass is always greener. You think like, okay, I'm through the hard part, but then you get to the next step and you're missing the old. Such a beautiful time because you only get one first like debut book. So these
Yeah.
feelings, like when you write your next book, you're gonna go back and miss the freedom of your very first book before anybody had it in their
Knows who you
hands.
are. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
But I
Totally.
love that now you're on the other side. So you've been writing about authors, celebrity culture for so long, books, and
Yeah.
now you're going to be the author. So that's very cool. Of all of the celebrity interviews, authors you've interviewed, do you have one that is the most memorable or that stands out?
Oh my God, that is such a good question. In terms of authors, Ottessa Moshfegh was really exciting to interview.
I was gonna say that. I was like, if I that is who I would assume from all of the articles that I've read by you, I would feel like that would be such an interesting author to interview.
So she was very cool because we zoomed and she's like she's sitting like on the floor of her like basement LA apartment and it's like everything's low to the ground and like cavernous. And she starts talking about how it like used to be a church or something. Like it's just so her. And then we do the interview and then afterwards, um, for like an 45 minutes. She just we're off the record at this point, but I can say this now because it's not in my article. She just gave me life advice. Like we just talked about she just talked about being in your 20s versus in your 30s and writing a book. She was encouraging me to leave New York to write my book because it can be very distracting here, which I didn't do. But so I don't know. She's very cool. Like I was so intimidated, and then she was just like so generous with her time and advice, which was really cool.
That's the best thing. Say like don't meet your idols or whatever, and then they
Yeah.
actually do turn out to be everything you hope to be. Curious why she said to mo leave New York, and I'm glad you did take that advice because there's something also poetic about writing a book in Bushwick and being in proximity to it. But what
Yeah.
do you think? Like, do you think you actually to write a book you should be in the city, or do you need to kind of get out in nature, quiet, solitude?
So the other person who gave me this advice was Caroline Calloway, who famously moved to Florida to write her book because she couldn't get anything done in New York. At the time I talked to Caroline, she had convinced me. Like I was going out a lot. I was not working on my book at all. I had a plan to go to Oregon for like a month and try to like write there. Basically, then I fell in love and I didn't want to leave or I didn't want to leave New York.
Happens.
So I stayed here. No, you don't need to go anywhere to write a book. You just have to start to prioritize writing the book.
Yeah.
I really wanted some time off of work to write it. That did not end up happening, but it was okay because I just spent many entire weekends, like entire Saturdays, just working on it. And I just really like carved the time out to do it. And it sounds people had given me that advice too, just saying you just have to carve out the time. And I'm like, what are you talking about? That's so hard. Like with work, with wanting to be social, with wanting to go to the gym, whatever. But there actually just isn't a shortcut to that. Like, you don't have to go anywhere, you don't have to quit your job. You just have to be willing to set aside even like one entire day a week to do it. And so I wrote it in New York, but I will say this summer I spent 2 days at a convent upstate for this like very like kind of DIY inexpensive writing retreat. I just went to this convent for 2 days and they like cook all of your meals for you.
What?
There's all these, nuns. They have a swimming pool.
I want to
All
live there.
yeah. So I got a lot done at the convent too.
So that's okay. So that's how you finished. Did you have a word count goal or just kind of seeing how many chapters you could get done on your Saturdays?
My word count goal was 60,000 for the whole thing. And another thing with the Saturdays is like, I actually thought about working on the book. I thought of it as I'm having shifts. So similar to when I worked at a bar and I would work at NYLON, I was like, okay, I have a shift, a Saturday morning shift, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. at the bar was a restaurant too, so they had brunch. So then I would just be like, okay, well, I don't work at this bar anymore. So I'm going to clock into my shifts doing the book. So I would do like a shift on a Saturday morning, a shift on a Monday night.
I've never heard someone describe it like that. I really like that
Yeah, that
imagery.
helps me a lot. But during my shifts, I wasn't trying to get to any certain point. Towards the end, like, I finished my draft in August, and I was really trying to finish it by August just because I don't know, I had spent so much time with it and I was kind of like, we just need to push and get this over the finish line. Then
Yeah.
I started giving myself goals. When I was at the convent, I was like, okay, I'm on page, and this is like editing. I have edited 120 pages. I need to edit 60 pages while I'm here. And I would really just lock in, as they say, and do that. But I think if I had set myself goals like that throughout the process, it would have been like too much pressure.
Yeah, because if
Yeah.
you sat down for a shift, clocked in, and didn't get any words down, but the book is percolating, that's still writing, but everyone feels like a failure if they don't
Yeah.
get words on the page, but you're not. You're still at least dedicating mental energy to the book.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited. Hopefully I get to read a galley someday of this book. Do you have a
100%.
tentative title?
Neon Corner.
Oh, I love that.
Thank
I can
you.
picture the cover already. Well, one of the big articles you famously wrote the makings of a literary it girl in Nylon magazine. I feel like it went wild all over Twitter. I guess people call it X now, everywhere. So I'm very curious to kind of pick your brain. What now, a year later, do you think makes a literary it girl? You're about to become one yourself.
Oh my God. Here's hoping.
Yeah.
Um, that's such a good question. It's funny because I feel that the literary it girl conversation is just as relevant, if not more so, than it was a year ago. I continue to be blown away at the discourse, TM. I think a literary it girl is the same thing as I thought it was a year ago, which is a woman who takes publicity and marketing of their work into their own hands and is willing to take the challenges of self-presentation, of being an author and being an artist, and twist them into something that can help them gain notoriety, that can help them boost their career. Whether or not that translates to sales is like a totally separate thing. It is about persona and being able to market yourself as part of your book, which I know sounds so businessy and kind of gross. I think it's so exciting, the idea of having a persona that gets to help you in your career. And that way you're giving away less of yourself. I'm sure we're going to talk about Sally Rooney, but like I think this has everything to do with Sally Rooney and her resistance to publicity and to fame. I totally get why she doesn't want to like give any more of herself. And I think that like having a persona can really help with that.
100%. Like that's why I love this discourse, TM. The Sally Rooney, she does have, to me, have a persona by not having a persona.
Yes.
It's like the people who say like, "Oh, I don't go on Instagram, I don't post on Instagram, or I don't overshare." By doing that, that's still a persona. It's like the cool girl persona by not posting. So
Yeah.
everyone has one. It's just how far do you lean into it? Like how do you express it? And I find it really interesting and really clever because publishers, they don't, I find them very archaic, to be honest, of how they market books these days.
Yeah.
The New York Times bestseller list, I mean, Book Talk, we'll get into that too, because I'm really curious your thoughts on Book Talk and romance books and how they're dominating bestseller lists. But like these it girls who are doing it in a new way that I'm really fascinated by because it feels very underground, but it's
Yeah.
also very provocative and in your face. And you said this in the New Guard podcast that Kendall Jenner was patient zero of the literary it girl. I loved that. And I don't know if it was you or Alyssa who mentioned, but she has is it a book stylist or a book
Yeah,
curator?
she has her modeling agent, Ashley Gonzalez, who is actually a poet who just came out with her first book this year, Fake Pinata on Rose Books, an imprint by Chelsea Hodson, who Chelsea Hodson is one of these literary it girls I'm talking about, but Kendall was first photographed like reading Chelsea Hodson's book on a yacht, which kind of started this whole thing of, oh, Kendall is reading all of these kind of indie cool girl books. Who is giving them to her? Which is obviously it's problematic to think that she couldn't like find them herself. But in this case, it's like behind this patient zero literary it girl is another literary it girl. It's such an interesting case study and the most visible one too of like everything that we're talking about.
I found that really fascinating. I like that it's kind of her modeling agent too behind it. So,
Yeah.
do I need to be posting with my book in a bikini to be a New York Times bestseller? Is this the way? It's the oldest marketing trick in the book that sex sells? Like, what do you think?
No, you don't have to do anything that doesn't feel native to you because you are the product. The exciting thing about Literary It Girl to me is that it's just getting more creative about marketing and self-presentation. So,
Mhm.
like some of the women who I wrote about, like Ali Rowbottom, Marlo Granados, Claudia Day,
I love
these
all of
women,
them.
they're amazing and all really talented writers throwing themselves fun, splashy parties. Like Allie's party had pay by donation Botox. Claudia Day commissioned a custom perfume from Universal Flowering that corresponds with her book. Like, it's just getting more creative about marketing because no, you don't have to pose in a bikini to sell a book, but the more involved you are in the marketing and publicity of your book, the better it's going to do. And for a long time, authors were not told or expected to be a part of marketing in this way. Maybe they would go do a reading that their publisher set up for them at a bookstore that, ends at 8 p.m. Maybe they would go do the tour in like cities where they don't even know anyone. And then they do their book tour and no one shows up. Like that's a really common thing.
Yeah.
Then everyone's surprised when like debut authors aren't selling. What is exciting now is that I think publishers are really kind of catching on to this movement that writers have started themselves, which is marketing in ways that feels really natural to them and meeting readers where they actually are.
I love that. Writing a book is so personal, but I think what I really find fascinating about it is that, yes, they're creating a persona, it's authentic, but I think Claudia Day said this too. It's still setting the stage for the novel itself. She still gets to maintain her privacy and have her own intimate life that no one sees. It is them, but it isn't them as well. They're
Yeah.
curating what they want you to see, tailored to their book. And I
Yeah.
love all of that. All my books are so personal. It's like a part of an extension of myself. So even something as simple as matching my book,
Mhm.
dressing like my book for a year before it launches
Yep.
feels like natural and intuitive because I'm in the tones and the aesthetic of the book itself. So yeah, I'm really fascinated by all of that.
It's really fun to think about. And you're so smart for giving readers visual clues like that. I went to the Sally Rooney Intermezzo release party last week, and obviously, Sally Rooney does not need merch. She does not need a splashy premiere party. Like, but that's beside the point because we all love this stuff because she is the quote unquote voice of a generation, right? But just the visual identity of the party was very much everything was yellow and gray, like the book cover. We got like bagu bags with like the intermezzo on it in the same shade of yellow. There were intermezzo like chess cookies, like there was a photo booth, everything was gray and yellow. I have it right here. So I'm like, if it helps to have
Oh yeah, let's see.
a visual, but it's like, yeah, every single thing was this color.
Happy Sally
Though
Rooney Pub Week to all who
yeah,
celebrate.
doing something like dressing in the colors of your book for a year before, it's helping readers find you. And that's the thing too. There are so many books and it is so hard to cut through the noise. And if you can do anything to help a reader find a book that they might really love that they wouldn't otherwise find because you're not on Good Morning America like all of the bestsellers are, that's just a service to all readers. And I think that's what is the really like kind of sweet, generous thing about this too.
Yeah, no, I love all of that. I want to delve more into the Sally Rooney launch party for Intermezzo that you attended. You were also featured in Vogue. Very cool.
That was so funny.
So cool. Take us inside. What is it like going to a launch party where the author is notoriously, they won't be there? And it was hosted by Belletrist, Emma Roberts' Celebrity Book Club.
It was so much fun. The instant I walked into the doors of the Irish Arts Center in Hell's Kitchen, which is, likely place for a Sally Rooney party to be, I saw Emma Roberts doing a step and repeat. And I was like, God, we've arrived. Like, this is the pinnacle of the book launch party. This is what a splashy book launch party should be. There was some talk, me and Layla, my co founder of
Mhm.
Language Arts, we were kind of whispering about, maybe is Sally Rooney here? Like, if she was going to come to anything, like, she would come to this. Like, we're at the Irish Arts Center. It's not like a public event. I don't know. Maybe she would be here. And then very quickly, Kara and Emma were interviewing Mitzi, the president of FSG, who's Sally's publisher. She's also her editor. And she was like, Sally's not here. So, we all knew this, obviously, but I think it was really fun. I mean, the energy in the room was, everyone was really excited because I think since I wrote the article a year ago, more and more literary parties have been popping up and they have been getting more creative. They have had more merch. They have been held at more fun places. And I think like bigger publishers are catching on to this phenomenon that other writers have started. So
They're getting
it
bigger
was
budgets for the launch parties, which is nice.
exactly. This was a big budget party, a custom photo booth, mini shepherd's pies,
Delicious.
Gia
I've never seen
mocktail.
a mini shepherd's pie.
It was so delicious. We were actually fortified, and usually you go to a party and you're fighting for like one piece of cheese. And, I was like, oh, I'm kind of full now. Guinness on tap. There was a friendship bracelet making station with customized beads. There were bandanas, chessboards everywhere, intermezzo sticky notes. It was really crazy and cool, kind of how much budget went into it, how big of a deal they are making it. This makes sense for a best-selling author.
How did you decide what to wear to this?
I inadvertently ended up wearing like I wore black and yellow, which are the colors of the book, but I didn't really mean to. It was a laundry day, like honestly, but I did, yeah, I wore black and yellow, some cowboy boots. I like to at pseudo professional events, I like to, have a little fun with
Yeah.
my books. It was star-studded. I'm using quotes because it's like we're not talking A-listers, except Emma Roberts, but Coco Malore was there, Lily Marotta of Celebrity Book Club, one of my favorite podcasts, Anna Marie Tendler, who just came out with this big book. Like it was really fun to kind of see who was out and about too.
That is so fun. And
Yeah.
I'm really curious about this book launch in particular because of Sally Rooney. Part of what makes someone so magnetic is that we don't know everything. And even just this intrigue of will she, won't she, will she be there? Do you think that is kind of the new wave? Should more authors be taking this kind of reclusive approach to being a literary it girl?
No, I don't think that the move is going to be reclusive. I was listening to Sally Rooney's interview with the New York Times, and she was talking about how she's just like, I have given everything to the book. I don't have anything else to say about it. She is in a very unique position of being able to recuse herself from the press, from the marketing. I think that is, for a lot of people, the ultimate freedom. I remember Gia Tolentino saying something about this when she was much younger. She felt like she had to be on Twitter all the time. And the one of the beautiful things about, reaching a certain level of your career is that you don't have to do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think that for me personally, like, self publicity and it feels very natural to me. And I think a lot of the women that I spoke to for my story, they like going to parties. So they're going to throw parties that are fun for them. They like perfume and silly merch. And so it makes sense for them to do it. I think writers should do what makes sense for them.
Mm-hmm.
That might mean you might need to get out of your comfort zone a little bit in order to like throw up a party or have a reading or something that feels like you. But I think being reclusive is a huge privilege. And, there might be one day where I hope that I can be there. Maybe that might be the goal for all of us, is to one day let your work just speak for itself and to not have to obsess over the press and the marketing and mailing galleys out to reporters and sliding in DMs of book influencers. Like, authors are working so hard and it's really impressive. Yeah, I think that the dream for everyone is that one day you don't have to work as hard.
That is my ultimate goal. I really like how you worded that. To be reclusive is a privilege because I'm always struggling with that. My innate nature, I would love to live in a cabin in the woods and just have my work speak for itself and readers find it, but that's just not the reality. I feel like if I'm not shouting from the rooftops about my books, no one is gonna find them. I'm just like shouting into a vacuum. So that's why Sally Rooney is such an anomaly and like aspirational to me. But even with her first book, her whole trajectory, she was always kind of aloof and mysterious, and I could only strive to be so mysterious.
She's a quiet Irish girl. I'm not like trying to conflate her and her protagonist, but they're like socially weird. And
Yeah,
I think it's very cool that she doesn't have to do all of this. Like,
yeah.
and I think it's great, readers who love her, that we can still go to a party and that she doesn't have to throw it.
I know, exactly. You get to just celebrate with Belletrist. That's very cool.
They're the best.
Yeah.
They're both so great.
I would love to learn more about the origin story, how language arts. I've been subscribed
Thank
since you
you.
guys started it. You and your co-founder are just so on the ball with the books that I want to read. It feels very targeted to my particular taste. So I'm curious how that came to fruition, your Substack.
Thank you so much for saying that. I love to hear that people are taking our book recommendations. Layla was my editor at NYLON. She hired me 3 years ago, and we just developed a really good working relationship and friendship at NYLON. And we both left this spring, and we decided to take our book coverage to Substack. Substack has been really amazing. One of our friends, Matt Starr, who runs Dream Baby Press, which is another great New York like DIY, throwing really fun parties and stuff. He also works at Substack, and he came to me and was like, basically, NYLON was kind of having an editorial direction. They weren't interested in covering books anymore. And
So
I
sad.
was like, what? This is my favorite thing to do. And everyone loves our stories. So he was like, you guys should go to Substack. Like, people will follow you. You have such an audience.
I'm
And
proof.
yeah, thank you. So Layla and I started language arts in July, and it's been really fun. We interview authors. We make kind of irreverent book recommendation lists. Like, we have a list that's like gay panic books, and it's just about panicky gay protagonists. Like, a few weeks ago, I did a list of custom cocktails for 3 books coming out in September. We had the writer Anna Dorn do a list of books and pair perfumes with them. Like we just have a lot of fun. And so yeah, we do lists, interviews, and then party reports. So language arts has been amazing. I love working with Layla, and we really love recommending books. And I have heard so much from publicists, from authors, that they're just really grateful to have another place for book coverage because it just feels like are more and more books and fewer places to cover them. And I'm looking at my coffee table right now. I have like 30 galleys of books that I really want to write about. And it's like, we can only do so many. But yeah, it's been great.
Well, that poses a question. I'm curious. You have 30 galleys there. How do you decide which ones to cover? Is there pressure from the publisher? This is a hot book, you need to cover it. How do you balance that line of what your reading tastes are versus what the media wants you to cover?
It's a really good question. It's hard to explain the alchemy that makes me and Layla decide what to cover or what to not cover. I will say that if a book feels like it's found its home somewhere else, for instance, if it is on Good Morning America, if it
Mhm.
is in Kaya Gerber's book club, if it feels like it's getting a lot of press elsewhere, we will probably choose to cover another book instead of it because we're really passionate about helping readers find books that they're not otherwise going to find. Obviously, we're going to cover Sally Rooney because she is Sally Rooney and she's totally with our audience. Like our audience loves her. So there are, of course, exceptions. We love debuts. We love weird books. Yeah, we love literary fiction. I feel like we rarely cover authors by straight men. It's not on purpose. It's just what happens. But also, it's like I have good relationships with authors and publicists now, so people will email me and be like, "I think you guys will really like this book." And I really trust publicists and authors too. But yeah,
I
people
love
will DM me and ask to send galleys, and I'm always like, "Yes, please." Like, if an author is out there like doing that work themselves, I have so much respect for it.
I agree, me too. Oh,
Yeah.
I like that. And I think that you're doing such a service of sharing these books that you genuinely like that wouldn't, like you said, get the coverage in the big Good Morning America or New York Times features
Yeah.
elsewhere. And it's so important because reading is so subjective. Everyone has so many different literary tastes. And
Yeah.
that's what I feel about book talk sometimes is that there's a lot of, not to be mean, but sheep of just everyone is just buying the same book over and over again. And maybe they love it, that's great and everything, but it just feels like there's not enough diversity or range of books. Like, what is your personal take on book talk taking off and how, particularly the romance genre, has really blown up on there?
So I will say I am not on TikTok at all. So I only have a vague understanding of book talk, but I of course like have seen what we're talking about. It's a stack of Simone de Beauvoir and Joan Didion, and we're talking about not original covers, but like the vibey like re-release covers.
Yeah,
I totally know the vibe. I think anything that is getting books in people's hands is only ever going to be good. I don't care if it's romance. I don't care if it's a book that everyone has read, because then people are readers. I think my one caveat is that while I do love beautiful book like jacket art, and I of course judge books by their covers because it is a really important part of marketing. When I think about book talk, I always think about how many people I have told to read My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante famously has a terrible book cover. You will never see this book on Book Talk. I have tried to give it to so many friends, and they're like, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to read it because it looks bad. And then, I don't know if you saw, but the New York Times this year named it like the best book of the 20th century.
yeah, one of
And
the top 100.
I think they named it number one. And I was like, okay, this is for everyone who has not read this book because it has bad jacket art. And I think that that just kind of speaks to this greater book talk thing of you do see the same 30 books being recommended. I think it's a really great place for people to start. And I hope that they're just inspired to look at other books
Oh,
after
great.
that.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. Yeah, it's a great place to start. It gets you thinking about books. You're maybe more apt to walk into a bookstore and pick up different books in the genre. The biggest criticism I've read about it is kind of that people are just showing these gorgeous book covers, but are they actually reading them? Is it
Right.
just posting about it? Which, to your point, who cares? Like, great, everyone's talking about books. It's on your mind. Maybe you'll actually start reading them eventually if you're not. Are there any other literary trends on your radar?
That is a really good question.
Probably a hard question too.
I think just in the this isn't like anything novel, but no pun intended. But I do think in the last year, the number of book recommendation Instagrams has really gotten kind of insane. Like, I feel like my explore page is entirely female manipulator books or like books
Yeah.
for getting over him or like, and they're all like really well designed and like the recommendations are pretty good. And I'm just kind of like, when did this, when did all of this happen? That's something that's interesting. I also like,
There's a big influx of celebrity book clubs. I mean, we have, like you mentioned, Kaya Gerber's Library Science,
yes,
Belletrist, Dua Lipa has one.
Marc Jacobs has one.
I didn't know that. Natalie Portman, I know she has one too.
This is what I wanted to say actually. The new trend is fashion's embrace of literature in the last 6 months has really taken off. DKNY did a library during Fashion Week in New York. Miu Miu had a library earlier in the summer. They like gave out popsicles and books selected by Lucia Prada. Fashion's embrace of literature has really fascinated me over the last 6 months, and I think is a partnership that makes a lot of sense. Books are, kind of being exalted to like luxury items. And I think that there's also nothing more luxury than, having time to read. So that's a really interesting embrace. And I'm just interested to like see where that goes, whether that's going to be writers walking in fashion shows, which has happened a little bit, like Ottessa has walked, or just more brands having like pop up libraries and stuff. I think that's fascinating. Alongside of this, celebrity book clubs, Emrata as well has a big one. I'm a fan, again, like with BookTok, I'm a big fan of the celebrity book clubs. I think that a lot of these women are also like doing their due diligence to choose books that feel like not so obvious.
Hmm.
That's really exciting. The celebrity book club has a dual benefit. Like, obviously, if you're a writer whose book gets picked up by one
Oh
of
my
these
God.
books, like you're set. And then for a celebrity, you get to be known as not just being like a beautiful woman, like not just being a model or whatever. It's like
Beauty
you
and
are,
brains.
yeah, beauty and brain, smart, cultured, a tastemaker. So I think that these clubs will only continue to.
Of the celebrity book clubs, which is your favorite?
Belletrist.
Me too.
I love Belletrist. And they've
I
been
feel
doing
like
it for,
they're the OG.
yeah, they started in 2015 or something. Like, they've been doing it a long time. So they were kind of the first. And I think that's really exciting. And they both have really good taste. And I think, especially with throwing this party, like, are just really kind of committed to bringing the experience like IRL too.
Yeah. Even I watched the Paris Olympics and they had the whole opening ceremonies in the beautiful library in Paris. I don't know if you saw that.
No, that's cool.
Yeah, it was so cool. That was a huge part of the opening ceremonies. And my YouTube feed, it has all these models talking in bookstores and libraries, and because books are the new accessory. Instead of a clutch, I'm gonna bring a book tonight.
It's a status symbol. Paperback selfie, like you reading in your bed, you're reading on the train, like it's totally a status symbol, which is
Yeah,
great for authors.
so great. Oh, I would die if I saw any celebrity walking with my book. What is next on the horizon for you? We know you finished your first draft.
I am really excited to keep working on the book. I just moved into my own apartment. Like, I live alone for the first time. I'm
A
really
dream.
excited about that. Big deal.
That's a status symbol. Living alone.
I am in Brooklyn. I'm in Prospect Heights,
Oh,
and I'm in a one bedroom, and it's like that's been really lovely. I just moved from Bushwick into like in the opposite neighborhood. So it's been kind of funny.
You've made it. No roommates, you've made it.
Oh, roommates, exactly. I do miss my roommate and her two cats, but I'll live.
She can come
Um,
visit.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think just continuing to work on the book and set up my apartment. I'm excited about these things.
A room of one's own.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I'm gonna end with a rapid fire. It's books and New York City edition, mostly so
Love,
I can just get selfishly all of your good recommendations.
love that.
But we'll start with books. So, what's currently on your bedside table or top of your TBR pile?
I just started reading Didion and Babbitt's.
Oh, I have that. I
Lily,
just got that one.
for people who don't know, it's Lily Analych's book about she found a treasure trove of letters in Eve Babbitt's apartment between her and Joan Didion. And it wasn't really known before, kind of, it was known that they knew each other and worked in similar circles, but this just really kind of reveals, we're talking about persona, like these letters really start to reveal Joan behind her very well crafted persona. So that I just started that yesterday and that's been incredible.
Okay, I'm gonna move that up to the top because I just finished
Yeah.
actually two like Joan Didion adjacent books,
Yeah.
Uptown Local by her assistant,
Oh,
Joan
cool.
Didion's assistant, and then the Friday Afternoon Club, which was a Bellatrist pick.
Yes. Yes, I
But
have that on my list too in my pile.
I mean, it's a bit name droppy.
Yeah, yeah,
Wasn't
yeah.
not enough Joan, IMO.
Yes, I can see that. I went to the airmail had a release party for that and I went and they had caviar there, which was so crazy. It was amazing.
Bougie.
I was so bougie.
What is your most recommended or gifted book?
Thirst for Salt by Madeline Lucas
Oh,
is the book I recommend the most by far.
I have it right here.
Really? Have you read it yet?
Wow. I can't believe we haven't talked or I didn't know this about you. I thought like I always think I like discover these books, but obviously I didn't.
No, I mean you probably did discover this book. Yeah, I interviewed Madeline when it came out. We like went and had coffee in Williamsburg. She's so lovely and the book's incredible. I recommend it constantly.
I love it. It's quiet. I say that with high praise. It just sneaks up on you, and there's something that kind of gets in my bones with that book, and it's hard to
Yeah,
explain.
I
Wow. Okay,
completely
this is why I knew we had the same reading taste.
exactly. And that is published by Tin House, which is a Portland publisher, and so I'm always trying to support them too.
Next, favorite books or authors of all time? This is a big question. It's kind of like the New York Times 100 best books of the 21st century, or books that you return to often.
Oh my God, such a good question. I love Elena Ferrante. I love the Neapolitan novels. Like, I think they're really incredible and perfect. And I know that's so, like, yeah, duh, they're amazing. Yeah, that might be kind of an obvious answer, but I really love those. I also return to Miranda July's short stories a lot.
Hmm.
I am such a fan, and All Fours is probably a close second for books that I have been recommending the most. Like, I won't shut up about that book this summer. So I return to her a lot too.
Same. I've been recommending her a lot, but then I always feel weird after because they're like, wow, I like this book. Then it took a turn. I'm like, what does it say about me, how much I love it? But no, it's so good, all fours. I'm gonna have to read her short stories.
They're very good. Also, Geek Love by Catherine Dunn is really incredible. It's this like freaky 80s sci-fi book that has so much heart and is really special and is a book that I will return to again and again.
Your most anticipated reads coming up for the fall winter season.
Ooh, definitely Sophie Kempf Paradise. Wait, I have it right here. Paradise Logic. I just started it. Funny and weird. Also, I'm literally like looking at my pile.
I like that behind the screen you have all of the hot new books that none of us know about yet.
It's so funny. This book, Alligator Tears by Edgar Gomez, I'm really excited about. He wrote a memoir called High Risk Homosexual a couple years ago, and I interviewed him for that. And then I met his editor at my friend's birthday, and we just made the connection. And so anyway, I'm even more excited to read it now after
That's
meeting him.
serendipitous. The best book launch party or event that you've ever been to.
Alley Rowbottom Aesthetica by far, the book party that inspired Literary It Girl. That's where the paid by donation Botox was. That's where, Caroline Calloway like pre-recorded a message that played. It was at the Georgia Room in this beautiful hotel. I was like, oh, this is what a book party should be.
Your favorite bookstore in the city.
I really love Honeymoon in Ridgewood. It's a really small bookstore. It's a cafe with a bookstore in the back,
Cute.
but it's great. And then I also, for the first time, just went to Argosy Vintage Bookstore, which is in Manhattan, and it's on like 61st, like on the Upper East Side. And it just has like all of these really amazing old books. That's great too.
Okay, I gotta go there. Your favorite writing haunt.
The Standard Hotel, East Village. You can sit there for a long time because it's a hotel. The public hotel is great too.
So you just sit in the lobby, order a martini, and write.
Yeah, it's
The
great.
dream. Well, now I have to ask, how do you take your martini?
Dirty gin.
That leads to my next question. Pick your poison. What's your go-to drink while you're writing and your go-to drink while you're out on the town or celebrating?
Ooh, fun. Probably a dirty gin martini for both, but I will say that also when I write, I sometimes just like to get like a really cold light beer and put it in a glass and just kind of have it. It takes me 2 hours to drink like a small beer and I'll just kind of have it there, but I'm mostly focused on writing. I really like to do that. Like just like a little taste of something.
Just slowly
Cuz it
sipping on an ice cold beer.
yeah, cuz when I write with a martini, it's kind of like after one I'm like, "Ooh, like I'm drunk. I'm gonna write whatever." So, yeah, but then celebrating dirty gin martini or a Cosmo.
You're kind of like
Yeah.
Ernest Hemingway. He, what is it? Write drunk, edit sober.
I know. I mean, I really like try to this is why I try to not write drunk. And also I just read some really good advice from Tao Lin, who wrote that you shouldn't write when you're while listening to music because sometimes you'll be writing and you're like, oh, this is so good. But you're just thinking that because of the music is making you think that. I was like,
I-
damn, I need to stop listening to music when I write.
What music do you listen to while you write?
I have a playlist. I can only listen to like really specific songs. I'm kind of weird and anal about it. I have one playlist that is for writing that has only 3 songs on it, but they're repeated like 20 times. They just play on again and again, so I almost like don't hear them. And then I have one playlist of songs that I've curated that feel like the novel. And
Yeah.
so I'll go back and forth between those 2 playlists. If I'm listening to Elliott Smith, like I'm gonna be having feelings about, and I'm gonna transfer the feelings into like think that they're coming from the writing, even though it's not necessarily. So it was really good advice.
Yeah. Okay, the last rapid fire. My favorite is that it's rapid fire, but then I just want to keep asking you questions.
Yeah, I love it.
Your favorite restaurants and local watering holes.
I really love Ensenada, this Mexican restaurant in Williamsburg. It's kind of like Mexico City style Mexican food. They have this entire fish that's really good, and good mezcal margaritas.
Mm.
I love that place. I love La Cantine in Bushwick, this like really incredible cafe. It's like very simple food, but everything is delicious.
Mm.
Really good sandwiches and pastries and stuff. And I, for drinking, I love the Dancer in Chinatown. It's like just off the Dime Square kind of beaten path. Like my boyfriend lives in that neighborhood, and I feel like I never really feel like going to like Clandestino or something. So like go around the corner to the Dancer, which is really great.
Amazing. Okay, well, I appreciate this chat so much. I could probably talk your ear off forever, but
Yeah,
I
we could
will
talk.
sadly, reluctantly let you go. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Where can everyone follow you, find you, keep up with you?
So you can follow me at Sophia June on Instagram. Subscribe to Language Arts at languagearts.substack.com.
Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you so much.